The Cleveland Browns made some significant upgrades on the offensive line and the defensive line through the trade, through the draft, through free agency. Very deep in both units. Problem is, they're now going to have some deep decisions to make as we watch camp battles unfold. We're going to talk about it. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB, and the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd, and I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. The everyday crowd on YouTube keeps growing and growing. Do not miss out. Join the party. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There is something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. The OBR's Pete Smith is in for today. Happy July. 6 months in already to 2024. Players will be reporting in 3 weeks and change to begin 2024 NFL training camps. It will be here before you know it. Pete, I want to touch on this because I know this is something you wrote about today. One of the probably better stories of the Browns defense, the Browns defensive line overall last season was certainly Maurice Hurst. A guy who just had so much hard luck basically since this draft process began at the University of Michigan. And then in the NFL, every now and then there was a couple of, moments where he showed a little promise, significant injury after significant injury. Last year really, got his opportunity and, was healthy for most of the season, really shined. He was able to, be a great penetrator in the backfield, certainly a solid pass rusher. Everybody remembers the miraculous interception in Seattle. But with the selection of Michael Hall, this room is looking crowded as it is. You have guys where you're going to have to figure out if they're going to make the team. Siaki Ika is certainly one of them. Michael Hall will be here. You have a lot of veterans in that room now as well. It's gotten real tight within the defensive tackle room really, really quickly.
Yeah, so in general, I think the Browns are going to carry 10 defensive linemen, and I think the ends are done. I think they're going to keep Myles Garrett. They're going to keep Zadarius Smith. They're going to keep Okoronkwo. And then they're going to keep Alex Wright and Isaiah McGuire. And
just run back the 5 they had last year.
Yeah, it's going to be easy. Those are their dudes. That's part of the reason it was very easy for them to be like, all right, Lonnie Phelps, you were DE9. We're not going to mess with it. So that leaves you with 5 defensive tackles. And Dalvin Tomlinson is your one guy right now who can be a credible 2-gapping presence. They let Jordan Elliott walk in free agency. He's now with the 49ers. They have to find somebody else who can do that role. Last year, Jordan Elliott was the starting nose, and then Dalvin Tomlinson would rotate between the 3 or some nose. When Shelby Harris was in there, the 3. They have to find that other guy, and that guy is going to take up another spot. And they have 2 guys on the roster that can do that job. It's either theoretically can do that job. Siaki Ika, last year's 3rd-round pick. And then Juwan Briggs, this year's 7th-round pick. And Siaki Ika is more the traditional 2-gapping type guy who was awful last year, looked unplayable, constantly on the ground. So he's got a lot to improve upon. And then Juwan Briggs, who's not a 2-gapping guy, he's a 1-gapping guy, which in some ways might be what Jim Schwartz would prefer to do anyway. Just get on the center as quickly as possible or guard before the double team could get there, displace them. From that standpoint, and Juwan Briggs has pretty good movement skills, very strong. But one of those 2 guys needs to win that job, or the Browns are going to have to go get somebody else to do that job because they have to be able to stop the run. That was just such a critical part of their success last year. They can't just be like, well, I guess it's cool if Derrick Henry runs on us. And you look no further than the playoffs, the Final Four, all those teams ran the ball effectively. And in the case of the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes is the dude, but the AFC Championship was carried in no small part by Isaiah Pacheco running over the Buffalo Bills. You have to be able to stop everything. And obviously the Browns are predicated on stopping the run to set up obvious passing situations. So then they can get into situations where they are sub-packaging and bringing in all these athletic guys. So if you take those two defensive tackles out of it with Tomlinson and knows to be determined, you are left 3 spots. One of those is Shelby Harris, who can be a run-stopping presence and is just sort of a professional defensive lineman. One of those is going to be Mike Hall, because you just drafted him in the 2nd round. And part of the reason you believed you could draft him was because you watched Maurice Hurst do all the things that Mike Hall did at Ohio State, except Mike Hall is more athletic and just turned 21. And you're looking at this going, wow, he's a perfect fit for our scheme. And the other guy they added to, filling in the void of Jordan Elliott, not by role, but just by person in the room, is the guy that's not talked about very much, is Quentin Jefferson. And Quentin Jefferson can line up anywhere on the front, though with the Browns, he's mostly going to be on the interior. But from a pass rush standpoint and a size standpoint, he's Eric Armstead, who just plays the run like Eric Armstead's mother. Like there's just he cannot play the run at all. But the Browns didn't sign him to play the run. That's why he's gotten a $4 million contract, which is all guaranteed. And Eric Armstead got, I think, $17 million per year with Jacksonville, because he's half a player, but he's really good at that half a player. So you take those 3 guys now, and there's an argument to be made that you want to keep that extra guy. You want to keep Maurice Hurst. I don't know if Mike's ready. I don't know, injuries and all this, but you're not going to activate 5 defensive tackles on game day. You're probably going to carry 4. So if things go as you hope they will, if Hall is able to contribute a little bit, if Jefferson is what they expect him to be, they've got Zadarius Smith back, who can kick inside and rush. Alex Wright could theoretically kick inside and rush. Where are the reps for Hurst? And that is ultimately the problem. He's on a contract. Hurst, for his part, is on a contract where he's guaranteed $1 million. He has a bunch of bonuses that he could theoretically achieve, but if the Browns aren't going to keep him and they trade him or cut him, they're on the hook for $1 million. And if they trade him, it's even less than that, because some of that's guaranteed salary. Hurst was phenomenal for the Browns. He played 302 snaps, which is the most snaps he's played since 2019. And then he had his 3rd season-ending injury in a row with the pec. I think last year it was a bicep, and then I don't remember what it was the year before. But it was miraculous that he got the 13 games out of him he did, and he was so good, which is what made it sort of crushing for him to then go out at the end of the season, because you thought, because during the season, the fear that, Maurice Hurst is going to go in free agency, and all of a sudden the Browns aren't going to be able to afford him because he's had all this success. But that injury part of this makes it impossible. There's a world theoretically where the Browns can cut him, and Maurice Hurst said, no, I'm going to sign with the Browns practice squad and screw everybody else. But that's not realistic. I assume he's going to want to go play somewhere else, and I assume the Browns would then want to trade him so he does not end up in Cincinnati, so he does not end up in Baltimore, and they can get something back for him because he will have some value. But unless they have an injury, I just don't see how he's going to be back on this team. It's not because he wasn't good. He was good. I think PFF wrote an article saying he was the most underrated player on the team last year heading into this year. No argument for me, but the Browns have made the decision to say, we want to get younger up front. Mike Hall is now the only rookie contract interior, I should say, guy who plays from the 3 on the team now. They don't want to live in a world where they're going stopgap every year and trying to fill out the position. It's unsustainable. And the Browns want to get a premium pass rusher, more guys, to help Myles Garrett. But Myles Garrett is still at the peak of his powers. But even as he sort of creeps into his 30s, where I think he can still play at a super, super high level, they want him to have guys that are sort of there with him. Perfect. The absolute dream scenario is that Mike Hall becomes Jerome Brown next to Reggie White. That is the ideal situation. Can that happen? Unclear, but clear that the Browns think that Mike Hall has the potential to be a impact player that that Hurst can't be.
And, look, you made the moves in the offseason. And, we all know that, Hall was somebody that they certainly had a lot of interest in, and that continued to grow throughout the process. And, so it wasn't a shock. And, I'm sure guys in that room understood, and there's plenty of guys in the league who know the game, know the business, know the way stuff works out. And you're 100% right. Trading Maurice Hurst would be more ideal for the Browns than anything, because they would love to control the destiny of where Maurice Hurst would go if it does not work out through the summer here. And again, these things do sometimes have a way of working themselves out, but you don't want to even approach that, because that means, somebody probably is in line to miss significant time. We're going to continue here. Your latest Locked On Browns rolls on. We're going to talk a little offensive line. Pete Smith from the OBRs here. Appreciate it for sticking around. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I am in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd. We're joined by the OBR's Pete Smith. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Join the everyday crowd. Don't miss out on the action. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Pete, it's weird because, there's certain guys that we hear from all the time as far as social media, things of that nature. Then there are certain guys that you never hear anything from. But apparently Jack Conklin spoke, wanted to thank his wife. I guess he had a little bit of relationship with Nick Chubb here, as, injured guys often do. It seems, Jack's fired up, Jack's revved up, pretty much sounds like he's ready to go. But very much equal to the defensive line. The offensive line, there's going to be some shakeup. We know, obviously, there's going to be a new guard who is going to make this roster. There's no question about that in the rookie Zach Center. But there's going to be some new moving parts here as far as, basically the reserves of, the Cleveland Browns offensive line, all in an effort to get better, all in an effort to maybe find guys who fit more into, whatever the new system is going to be and the changes within the system. New offensive line coach and Coach Dickerson, but very similar, whether you're talking about, the defensive line trenches, the offensive line trenches. Some of the stories are going to remain the same. There's going to be some good battles here this summer, and there's going to be some guys who maybe put a good foot forward, and it might just not be enough.
So where do you want me to start?
You go in, you go out.
Look,
you be told where to start.
I mean, the guard situation, we know what it is. And it's the most important part of this team. Obviously, Bitonio had a miserable year from an injury standpoint. Knee surgery at the bye week, and I think that led to his back lock. Contributed to his back locking up during the season. He suffers the nasty high ankle sprain in the playoff game. He was not right. And if you look at PFF, he had his worst run blocking season, I think, since ever, or his rookie year. If he's healthy, they're going to be healthy and strong, which I expect him to be. They'll be a lot better. I think Wyatt Teller is the most important player on the line this year, not only because of where he is age-wise and where everybody else is, but also because of the offense. I think the transition is going to be very favorable to how Wyatt Teller plays. A lot more double teams, a lot more down blocks, just a lot more knock the guy off the line of scrimmage type stuff. If Jack Conklin is fully healthy, Jack Conklin is the best tackle on the Browns. It's not close. And I know there are people who are like, no, DeJuan Jones.
All-pro.
Jack Conklin,
all-pro.
It's an all-pro. He's, even if he's a couple ticks worse at pass protection, he's infinitely better, at least to this point, as a run blocker than DeJuan Jones was, who was awful as a rookie in that capacity. DeJuan Jones, a high-level pass protector as a rookie, but just awful run blocking. So that's going to be the big focus for him, in addition to just getting his knee right, which unfortunately covers a lot of people on this team right now. But if once DeJuan gets his knee where it needs to be, I know he's healthy and practicing, but just continuing to build the strength in that, if he can carry over the pass protection where he was really effective and improve as a run blocker, he's going to be really good. Now, the part that sort of gets clunky with this is like in a perfect world, I would love to see Juwan Jones go left tackle because pass protection is valuable everywhere, but the Browns' offensive line is sort of situated really well to run to the right. And if Juwan Jones isn't very good, that's sort of a problem. So to me, it's easier to put him on the left, especially if you have a healthy Jack Conklin. But because of the timelines, I don't know if that's realistic to move anybody at this point. We'll see if they mess around with it. And then you've got Jedrick Wills, has all the talent in the world and is just wildly inconsistent. What is that going to look like? Now, the thing that the Browns have with DeJuan Jones, with drafting Zach Zinter and Whippler last year, they have 3 guys that they would really like to be good to help sort of carry this thing forward. We'll see what Whippler looks like coming out of Ohio State. Does a whole lot of things really well. Feisty, just plays with a ton of effort and range. He's fast. He plays a lot more stylistically similar to JC Treader, whereas Ethan Posick is more of a heavier gap guy, which again seems to fit where they want to go. He's a bigger guy, 6'6" at center, gigantic. Whippler, if he can strengthen his trunk in particular, could be a force. We'll see if he can get there or if it's going to sort of be like he's always going to be sort of an undersized guy. But like after that, it's pretty wide open, and they've got to find somebody else. Like Michael Dunn is sort of the easiest guy to put in there next because he can play 3 interior spots. He's played both guards and he can snap. If the Browns decide to move on from him, I could see the Titans trading for him because they like to collect Browns offensive linemen. But additionally, the thing I would sort of keep an eye on is if they have Zach Zinter snap at all, because he's done it in spring games, as he's mentioned. He's repped there. He's just never done it in an actual college game. If they believe he can snap and be a viable center option in a pinch, then it makes them sort of it's easier for them to move off of Michael Dunn, who's going to be 30, might be more of a fit to the offense they were just running as opposed to the offense they will be running. So there's some moving parts. I think they really, really love Javion Cohen to be good as the undrafted rookie out of Miami because, again, then they'd get 2 young offensive linemen out of this draft that can sort of carry forward. And that doesn't mean Javion Cohen needs to eventually be a starter. It just means he needs to be viable enough to be at least that depth guy that they can keep
the next Michael Dunn.
Do what?
The next Michael Dunn.
Yes, yeah. I mean, just to be a valuable role player. And then, are they going to keep a 4th tackle at this point? I don't know that there is one. I don't think, I think we've seen what we're going to see from James Hudson III. Maybe he kicks inside to guard and they give him a shot there, but he's just so wildly inconsistent. Jermaine Ifedi seems to be playing more guard than tackle right now. Yep. He's played both. Hakeem Adeniji, a tackle. They get to keep Roy Mbiteka from he's part of the International Pathway Program, a enormous tackle, 6'8", 315. He doesn't kind of get the roster, so they can keep him regardless. And maybe there's a weird world where he's the 4th tackle. I wouldn't bet on that simply because I don't think he's done anything to distinguish himself. The Browns are his 3rd NFL team. So the other guy I think they'd really like to do well is Lorenzo Thompson, undrafted rookie out of Rhode Island, just to try to get more young guys on this roster. But because of the way they're changing up the offense, and obviously with new offensive line coach, Andy Dickerson, Roy Eastvan, and in some ways, Nick Charlton being the new run game coordinator, they just may have a different style, which is why they've changed over so many of these guys. They've got guys like Wyatt Davis. They've thrown a ton of darts at this thing. Brian Allen at center, Wyatt Davis at guard. They've got all these type of guys. But like right now, I've got like 8 guys that are definitely going to make it. And it wouldn't surprise me if they use a Michael Dunn or somebody like they did last year, as a guy they can sort of use to do some roster gymnastics. I know they've changed the rules on that a little bit, but still you may see some waiver funny business like the Browns did last year, which should help them in that scenario. So, we basically know who the starter's going to be other than right tackle. And even, we know what it's going to look like if Jack Conklin is Jack Conklin. It's just a question of whether he's going to be. And I don't know how much you bank on what Joe Thomas said earlier, where he's basically like, maybe he knows something, but Jack Conklin's done this before a couple times. Like, Nick Chubb is obviously a freak of nature, but Jack Conklin's done this well.
Certainly.
A couple times. Unfortunately, has a lot of practice rehabbing from these type of injuries. So they've got a lot of upside theoretically if they can get Jack Conklin back, if they can get Joe Bitonio back, that suddenly the line becomes very, very good in a hurry.
No doubt. We're going to move on to segment 3 here. Pete Smith from the OBR is here. Appreciate everybody for being along. We're going to talk about who had the best offseason in the AFC North outside of Cleveland. Everybody stick around. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. This time of year, you thumb through social media and, get a lot of people who get nervous about, keeping up with the Joneses, vacations here, vacations there. Look, comparison is the thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives. It may look like they've got it all together on their Instagram, but in reality, they probably don't, and that is why they are posting everything that they can. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, you should probably give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get started with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge if it's just not working out. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Your latest Locked On Browns, your host, Jeff Lloyd. Appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen. Join the everyday crowd. Be like the everyday crowd. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Always available, always free, wherever you get your podcast. The OBR's Pete Smith. Pete, there's not much left to be done. Everybody's going to do a little tinkering, a simple move, simple here. Maybe there could be some moves within the wide receiver market. But outside of Cleveland, which team in the AFC North had the best offseason?
So I think it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just think they're a year away from it counting the way they want it to. I think what they've done for their offensive line is really, really good. But they're going to have probably 2 rookies and 1 second-year guy starting, which could be great for their running game. I mean, that's who they want to be. But I don't know what that's going to look like in pass protection. They changed, obviously, in addition to changing to Arthur Smith as their offensive coordinator, they went from guys who get rid of the ball super, super fast at quarterback to the 2 slowest in the NFL. I don't know what the Steelers are going to look like on 3rd and 10. I don't think they have an answer for that in terms of the passing game, in terms of being able to do enough. I think Russell Wilson is better than some people do. I think he's going to keep Justin Fields on the bench for a little while longer than most. I know there are plenty who would perfectly happy to just move with Justin Fields now. But I think Russell Wilson's intelligence and some of the stuff he was able to do against the Browns defense, they caused a lot of problems in the first half of that game just by Russell Wilson understanding what he was looking at and putting his team in position to succeed. And it caused the Browns a lot of problems. I think the Steelers have sort of fixed their defense. Their DBs are better. I don't know if their corners are good or the secondary is good, but I think they've done enough things to improve the situation. Keanu Benton coming back in year 2. We all knew he was going to be a problem the second he was drafted. It continues to head in that direction, but they're just really, really solid on that side of the ball. Like they have gotten, if you're sort of to imagine what you think the Steelers are, the team they are this year, a lot of defense, run the football, play action. That is who they're going to be. As I said, I see a 4th place Steelers finish. The only team I think is worse than them potentially is the Bengals, because there's a lot of things a lot of holes the Bengals have in addition to the risk with Burrow. I think the Steelers could finish 4th this year and suddenly catapult themselves next year, the year following, if they can then find the answer at quarterback. So I'm hoping they finish like 9-8. Out of the playoffs and continue to get nothing, or trade up everything next year for a mediocre quarterback class. Either of those situations is good for me. But I do think what they've done is really, really smart. I think the Ravens are fighting losing a lot of things. And I think the Bengals did some good things in terms of their secondary. I think their secondary is better than a lot of people do. But they did not do anything to replace DJ Reader. And I do not know how they're going to stop the run with the group they have now. People are pointing to the fact that Bengals linebackers fell off a cliff last year. And I say to them, yes, they did. When DJ Reader went out for the season, all their linebackers suddenly couldn't play anymore. And they've done nothing really to address that. I think they're going to be a really good pass defense. I just think every team is going to come in there and run over them until they prove otherwise. And then you've got all these, maybe they're not a big issue, but you've got a whole lot of people who want contract talks that apparently are not even getting answers from the organization between T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson and some of these players. And, there are people who are low key worried about Amari Cooper and its effect in the locker room, which I don't think will happen at all. But these are all guys who are sort of we know the Bengals are cheap. We know they're probably not going to do what we need them to do. And yet we're going to be sort of forced to play this thing out. I would not be surprised if that is carryover effect and lingers. And that's beyond the fact that everybody's worried. And I think with good reason that Deshaun Watson has injury concerns. Joe Burrow's doctor is worried that he has injury concerns in regards to his wrist. That's terrifying for a team that had their entire offensive line play every snap last year. And obviously they added to it, but I don't know if they're going to have that kind of injury luck again this year. If one of those big guys goes down, they may be in a world of hurt. So I think, and the other thing with the Bengals, they got rid of Mixon and everybody's really excited about what they've done there, but are they going to be able to run the ball at all? I don't know the answer to that either. So I think the Steelers did well for themselves. I just don't think it's going to matter enough this year. And they'll be annoying. There'll be a team where you're sitting going, why don't you die? But that's just how they roll.
Yeah, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be a team you are not going to want to be within a one-score game in the fourth quarter. I do think that when you go from Kenny Pickett to Russell, there's going to be so much that is going to be made up by Russell Wilson just from experience, having been there, having been through it, having delivered. That'll make things certainly a little bit, different for Pittsburgh this year. I don't think he's going to be the Russell Wilson that he has been of the old. No, they certainly made a solid effort on, upgrading the offensive line through the draft. Defensively, certainly put money into that. I would agree. I certainly would agree. And I do kind of agree with the premise that it might not make much of a difference for Pittsburgh. But look, this division, as good as it was last year, it was going to be hard essentially for any team to really improve. You're going to need some guys to step up. You're going to need some guys to play better. Obviously, Pittsburgh's hoping they're getting better quarterback play. Certainly is the case for the Cleveland Browns. Baltimore, just going to hope that maybe you can continue to start to develop more of the passing game and getting wide receivers involved. And, for Cincinnati, it comes down to Joe Burrow, and it comes down to, keeping the weapons happy. And I don't necessarily know how they're going to do that. But they only got to worry about 24 for this year. They don't have to worry about 25, 26, 27. He is Pete Smith from the OBR. Make sure you check everything out. Pete and the guys over there put out great content day in, day out. We're getting to that point where this is going to really start to amp up again here. I know for everybody, I think it's the heart of the summer. For guys like Pete, guys like myself, our summer's about over. It's about time to go back to work and get back to work in all earnest and start working towards, putting out all the best possible content we can for the 2024 season. Make sure you're following @_Pete Smith_, myself @Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. Appreciate everybody, as always, who makes Locked On Browns their first listen. The everyday crowd's a bunch of filthy animals, but they're my filthy animals. Be like filthy animals. Subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go, Browns.